Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new Jane Remover album, Revengeseekerz. Revengeseekerz is the third album by the American hyperpop and electronic artist Jane Remover, and is an album that sees her leaning a lot more into the electronic and EDM side of her sound, but still also has a lot of that classic hyperpop with the very frantic and chaotic sound effects. And this style is evident right away on the opening track, Twice Removed, which just really gets to the point and just immediately hits you in the face with such amazing chaos that somehow still has an amazing structure to it. All of the chaos and the wild sound effects just really kind of let you know what you're in for the runtime of this album. I think that the progression of this track is a little bit one-dimensional, with it just building in a very linear way and doesn't give you much light and shade within that, but ultimately still does build to a really good and very satisfying ending. Psycho Boost opens with this really nice catchy beat and very quickly just goes into some absolutely fantastic EDM, and I love Danny Brown's rapping on this track as well, sounding absolutely amazing as a featured artist, and really just flowing incredibly well and just fits in amazingly with the rest of the song. And the kind of going in and out between the EDM and then the slight rapping interludes is just amazing, and I love the structure that it gives this song. I really love the more hip-hop leaning quality of Star People, and even the very heavily auto-tuned vocals actually sound really good and fit in well and don't sound annoying like auto-tuned vocals often do. And then just all of that layered with the very electronic leaning tendencies of the track, which obviously is present on pretty much the whole album, just gives it such a unique feel, and I just love how hip-hop influenced it is, but while still being undeniably electronic. Experimental Skin is a track that absolutely lives up to its name, with there just being so much weird and wonderful stuff happening, with the absolutely massive selection of instruments and sound effects that you can see on this track. And overall, I think this definitely just feels like a much more fully actualized version of the opening track, with a much better and much more dynamic structure that feels a lot less linear. And then, of course, at the end of the track, it just has a full-blown EDM outro, which I just absolutely love and is easily one of my favorite moments on the entire album. Angels in Camo is just much of the same and really just continues the consistent theme of this album, with just being so chaotic and wild, and there's so much going on, and yet still has this amazing coherent sense of structure which you would just never think is even possible. And especially on this track, one thing that I absolutely love about it is just the exhaustion that you can hear in the vocals, and it just really drives the point home about how wild and chaotic this entire album is, but particularly this song, when even Jane Remover herself is audibly out of breath. And Dream Flasher, despite being so crazy and chaotic for most of the track, does give you these nice little interludes that just give you a chance to breathe for a few seconds between all of the chaos. And then towards the second half of this track, it starts to build towards a climax and almost doesn't even give it to you and really makes you believe that it was just building towards nothing. And then the second build-up, while a little too slow, I think, does eventually give you the climax that is ultimately very satisfying. Turn Up or Die is absolutely amazing, with its almost breakbeat feel having the much harder percussion. And then, of course, all of the elements of glitch and hyperpop just blend in absolutely perfectly with everything else, and the calmer moments are also very well placed. And then once again, just like many of the tracks that we've already seen on this album, the full-on dance and EDM ending is just one of the best and most satisfying moments on the whole album. Dancing with Your Eyes Closed has this really fun and almost wholesome sounding intro, and of course still with the very prominent dance and electronic elements still at play as well. And this track definitely has one of the most unique progressions on the whole album, with it very slowly and very subtly just becoming harder and faster as the track continues. Fade Outs does have a very slow and long start, almost feeling like it's just going to be an interlude at first, but then eventually does build into a proper song. And despite seeming so random, there are still a lot of really cool arrangements and sound effects that actually fit in really well, with this track being overall quite unpredictable, but maybe just a little bit too unpredictable, like I said, with being such a slow start, but at least it does eventually go into an actual song. Professional Vengeance starts out as just a very straightforward dance track featuring a really fun synth riff. However, slowly as the track progresses, there are more and more layers that get added, and it slowly becomes just a little bit more avant-garde as it goes, with many of the arrangements and instruments that are added throughout the song sounding really unique. And I think the outro on this track is maybe just a little bit too much, being so over the top and very intense, but luckily doesn't go on for that long. Dark Knight Castle takes a much needed calmer and more gentle direction, which definitely after the crazy outro on the previous track is something that is much needed. And despite being so gentle, this track still manages to be quite experimental, with there being almost wonky leaning elements that still manage to make it really, really unique. And finally, JR is just a really fun closing track, still with the absolutely insane feel and energy of the rest of the album, and so many sound effects and a very unpredictable song structure. Something else that is just barely noticeable on this track that I really like as a nice touch is the almost industrial leaning quality of many of the sound effects, and this track definitely just leaves you with a lot to think about. And so overall, this is definitely just another fantastic album from Jane Remover, with her iconic hyperpop sound absolutely still being there, but with the slight elements of more experimental hip hop, and even so much electronic dance music, all just being such an amazing addition and really making this such a unique and interesting album. And so I'll be giving this album an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.